Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film a recent reads video. And this is just 3 or 4 books, maybe 5 books that I have recently read and haven't yet talked about in any great depth on my channel. So just to quickly get you caught up on some of the books that I've read in the month of June, I thought I would check in with the recent reads. So the first book that I finished in the month of June is this one, Dark at the Crossing by Eliot Ackerman. Evidently this was a National Book Award finalist. It was first published in 2017. And this tells the story of a young Arab American named Haris Abadi, who is, he has had a rough life. Let's just put it that way. He was born in Iraq. I believe he's born in Iraq. Yeah, because during the Gulf War, he worked as an interpreter for the Americans, and because of his service there, he received, he was able to come to America and become a citizen in America, he and his sister. But that has not gone well. It has not been all that he had hoped it would be, and so now he is back in Turkey, and the book opens with him in Turkey, trying to cross the border into Syria so that he can join the forces fighting to topple al-Assad's regime. So this is all about, you climb from that point where he's on the border with Syria and he is unable to cross when he tries the first time. He gets robbed, loses all his belongings, and then we find out what happens to him after that. And as he's sort of still attempting to get across the border into Syria so that he can fight in this war that he believes will bring freedom to the Syrians, we hear the backstory. Like, he's reflecting on what has happened to him in his life, and it's all about his disillusionment and also his loneliness and his despair in that nothing that he has ever tried to do has ever sort of turned out the way that he expected it to turn out. And through it all, we sort of see the horrific things that are done to the people in the Middle East, as especially from the point of view as an American, where, the Gulf War just, destroyed lives. And then as that war was over, but American forces stayed in Iraq, all the things that happened there that were not great. And so Haris has been, dealing with his own guilt over his part in that, because he was an interpreter, and he's trying to do something with his life that he thinks will make a difference. This book was very sad and depressing and dark. And there were times when I just wanted to give up on it. I did listen to this on an audiobook, and I think the audiobook was well done. But this is not an uplifting book by any means at all. But it did help me gain a better understanding of sort of things that I don't know very much about, like the war in Syria and how the war in Iraq felt to people on the ground in Iraq. I mean, granted, this Eliot Ackerman is not Iraqi himself, but he has done a lot of writing from that region before. So yeah, I don't know that I can recommend this book, because it definitely is not uplifting in any way. It was very dark and depressing, but I am glad that I read it. I then finished a book that you've heard me talk about on the channel previously. This is Sea People, The Puzzle of Polynesia by Christina Thompson. Now, I'm not going to talk about this one very much because I've discussed it a couple of different times in vlogs recently. This is a piece of science writing, nature nonfiction, all about how the islands in Polynesia, what we know about how the islands in Polynesia were populated. And this is extremely engaging, very readable science nonfiction, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. It's fascinating. And the science has been expanded and has changed tremendously in the last decades. And I think this book, again, even though it deals with some very sad topics, this book actually was uplifting. And the author did a really, because her love for the area of Polynesia comes through, her love for the Polynesian people comes through. She writes with a very empathetic tone towards the people that inhabit the islands of the Polynesian islands. So this book actually really did give me a sense of hope and a sense of wonder, which is definitely something I'm looking for in my nature nonfiction. So this one, highly, highly recommend. Let me just check my list. I then read an ebook that fit the bill for both Pride Month and for Caribathon, and that was American Dreamer. I've forgotten the name of the author. I will put a picture here. This book is a gay romance, and our two characters are, one is a owner of a food truck that serves food, Caribbean inspired food, because he's from the Dominican Republic, and the other gentleman is a librarian, and this takes place in Cornell, New York, I believe. And their romance is super cute, and I love the food truck elements and the library elements. Like, all of those were great. There's a lot in there about found family, because our character, who's from the Dominican Republic, has this huge Dominican family plus his best friends, who are all in the book, and they're great. And the librarian has fewer friends, and he has sort of a more sad backstory with his family, but you know, how they all get together and what happens in the end is very heartwarming. Really enjoyed it. My only complaint with American Dreamer is that the author banged me over the head with her lessons that she wanted me to learn. And not that I think that her lessons are not important. I absolutely do, but I prefer my fiction to be a little less heavy-handed on the messaging. So that took it down a couple notches for me. I just think that I prefer historical romances over contemporary romances. Contemporary romances have too much reality in them, and I prefer my romances to be very fantasy heavy. So, which is why I like historical romances better, because if I'm going to be reading for escape, I want to escape. I don't want to be brought down to earth by crappy shit that happens in everyday life. So yeah, that took it down a couple points for me, but I did love the Caribbean flair and the background of our food truck operator and his family. That was delightful. And of course, any book that has a librarian in it is going to be a win. And then I have to sadly report a DNF. So this one just breaks my heart, because this is Conquistadora by Esmeralda Santiago. And you guys know I love her 3-book memoir series that starts with When I Was Puerto Rican. I absolutely love those memoirs. And I think Esmeralda Santiago is an absolutely fascinating person. She lived a really interesting life. But this is her historical fiction novel, all about our main character, Ana, I believe it's Ana, yeah, who travels from Spain in the early 1800s, I believe, with her new husband to settle on his family's sugar plantation in Puerto Rico, and, you know, all of that historical background that would entail, which part I liked. What I didn't like is there is no character development in this book. Everybody is very cardboard, very two-dimensional, and there is just some ridiculous sexual exploits happening in the first. I read the first 100 pages of this book, and I just was not enjoying myself. I was buddy reading this with Doris and Alba from Seriella, and we just did a triple bail on this. So sad times, because I was reading this for Caribathon, and also because I love Esmeralda Santiago's memoirs. But, you know, that's the way it goes sometimes. Not everything is a success. And then the last book I want to mention is one I can't talk about too much, but I finished Our Bodies, Their Battlefields by Christina Lamb. This is a book that I read for the BookTube Prize. I am Nonfiction Group A. And it is a piece of nonfiction about, which is, Christina Lamb is a reporter, and she traveled all around the world to all sorts of war-torn places over the course of her career. And she documents how rape is used as a weapon of war. So I am not going to go into it any more than that, because I can't talk about what I thought about it, but just I wanted to mention it, that I finished it, and also mention, if you're interested in it, just be forewarned, content warnings galore. Very, very difficult subject matter. So, finish that. I think that's it for all the books that I have read so far in the month of June that I have not yet talked about in other vlogs or in other videos. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.